Hi everyone, my name is Kendrick and welcome to ENFP Mail. Today I get to interview Ezekiel. So welcome, man.
Hey, it's nice to meet you.
So Ezekiel, can you tell us what your exact type is?
Dave told me about over a year ago. I'm MF, NETI, consume, play, blast, sleep.
And what did you think and how did you feel when you got your results back?
Well, the first time he told me, I was sort of getting into MBTI for over a month, so I really wasn't into the patterns yet. I self-typed as a INFJ, taking the test, and I could see why I did. And he told me the results.
Oh, dude, your feed got cut there. Can you repeat that again?
Okay, let me move the desk sometimes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when Dave told me what type I was pretty relieved about it, just because I didn't have to keep thinking about it. And at that point, I self-typed as an INFJ, taking that MBTI test online. And yeah, I'm kind of glad that I got to the OPS before I really started getting to Myers-Briggs land. So yeah, over time, I kept seeing how true was what Dave typed me as.
So you typed yourself backwards originally, and then you turned out to be an EP at the end.
Yeah, I thought it was an intuitive. I never really thought what NE was. I guess if I have double activated FE, that's kind of what I thought. But I did originally think that my TI was stronger than the FE, even though the math said, or from what I understood, that wasn't right. But I was already trying to break the pattern somehow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with the first animal first, NT. So you are NT lead. How do you experience NT consume?
Yeah, well, I have these things I call fads where I really get into a subject, like just channel changing, like just going off memory. I get real into watching videos. At one point, I was watching some old guy give professional tips on carpentry. I look into drawing, and I just kept switching. And usually, I consume a lot of videos that are pretty nerdy, you can say. I find it interesting, but I've been trying to hold back on that recently.
Gotcha. So you like what is it, like Mark Rober kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, just real nerdy stuff. But lately, I've been trying to cut it back and seeing just consuming things that I'm actually going to be using, because otherwise it's just useless information in general.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the biggest questions I want to ask you in this interview is actually how do you experience NF play? That is the one that I'm really curious to see how you experience it. That's the one that I think it's hard to see. So, how do you experience NF play personally?
Yeah, I really thought about this myself. I asked my parents how I was like as a kid, and for what they told me, I was pretty easygoing. Just got along with everyone super well. I guess the way I could kind of explain this, it kind of talks about double masculine sleep too, just kind of bridging it with this story, is that one time I was going to this place, and not to get into the details, but I almost got robbed, and it was nothing dramatic. I ran away and didn't get a scratch. But when I really kept looking back at it, I'm like, why did I do that? Because there was a point in which the guy like turned his back to me. And for whatever reason, I followed him. I'm like, why did I do that? I felt so stupid for doing that. But I really thought about it. And what I rationalized, you can say, is that I was letting my double feminine play, you could say. I was going with the flow too much. But the way I related it and understood it is that I should have went to the double masculine sleep. And how I've experienced that, you can say, is I go to a place, like, since there's dogs where I live, sometimes it's a lot more likely to attack you, not like in the States. But anyways, when I'm facing a dog, you can say I go into a mode where I legitimately, you can say, convince myself that if this dog bites me, I'm gonna kill it. So it sounds pretty dark. But when I thought of that, instead of just using the double feminine play, like now I know I can switch into the double masculine sleep. And honestly, it was funny because the next day I had to go through that same path. I went there every morning, and I'm like, oh, I'll just take a knife this time. It won't be that big a deal. Probably sound like a psychopath, but yeah, that's kind of my story, if it made sense.
What about the NF part of that double feminine play of yours? Like, they call NF hippie, like it's an NF hippie, right? So like when you engage with other people, because it's plays tribe related, right? What kind of NF stuff are you? How do you use the NF part of that play when you're engaging the tribe?
Yeah, I guess I use another story. Is when I was a lot younger, 3 years ago, not much younger. But anyways, I was doing a lot of, I guess you could say, sleep processing, and I try to peacock that, you could say. I kind of wrote a document in which I try to highlight the importance of life, you can say. And like I really thought about like why I live and stuff. And I thought whatever I wrote was profound or whatever. So I felt like sharing it with other people just to get their input on it. And yeah, in that document, you can say that page, I talked about what death really means. So I guess I was in a way trying to say, or trying to see what, or connect with others, see how they experience like what's important in life. But sadly, well, not sadly, probably just because of me, yeah, what I kind of became disappointed because a lot of people didn't really have specific goals. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that may be a version of NF play.
So from what I'm gathering from you, you like to ping off the tribe and see what their life purpose is, because you were doing some kind of journaling about it, and then you wanted to kind of ping off them and see what everyone is, what their mission is or what their purpose is, and when you're trying to find that, the what is the point, the NF, what is the point, you try to get it from the tribe. It's not coming from inside, it's coming from like the tribe. Is that pretty much what you're trying to say?
Yeah, it sounds like it. But the thing I will say is that after that, I guess the reason why I said it's kind of disappointing is that I realized a lot of people didn't really put that much thought into it. I don't
Yeah.
want to sound any righteous or anything like that. But I think what happened after that is I figured that if I really want to go above and beyond, you can't just ask average people, you can say, not to sound negative, but really, I guess you could say, if I'm going somewhat NT here,
Yeah.
is that I started to not compare myself to people, but start comparing myself to an archetype, you can say.
Well, I think the truth is most people don't know what their life purpose is. I think they're just going by the social narrative, like, you're kind of given like a figurative pamphlet. You're like, okay, here's like what your life's gonna look like, right? Like you're gonna go to university when you are in your early 20s, and then you find someone to date, and then eventually marry, and then you go buy a house, and then 9 to 5. So that's kind of like the narrative that most people follow. They don't really have a purpose. So maybe I don't know if that's where your disappointment came from, because there's nothing unique about what people kind of is saying. It's just kind of like following a narrative that everyone has kind of already said. Like maybe you're hoping for something unique or different, or something like more personalized, but you got nothing. So
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't even say that I had a life purpose. I really don't know what I'm aiming at. What I just was focusing on is like, what goals do you have right now? I guess what I was just trying to do is like become the best self I could be,
yeah.
whatever that meant. And I wanted to see how other people were doing that and why.
Okay, so you wanted to compare what you're doing with other people. That's kind of like how you're doing your play. Like, this is my
Yeah,
end,
I guess you could say that.
you know.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, let's go with the double masculine sleep. What I noticed with ENTPs is a lot of ENTPs. This is kind of it's not all ENTPs, but I've seen this with a lot of ENTPs that have this in a savior state, not in a demon state. So you have it in a demon state, but I'm kind of curious. So the first part of the question is, are you weird with money? Because a lot of ENTPs, I find them, like, especially with the ones with like savior sleep, they're like really like controlling with their finances. They're like extremely controlling with how they spend their money. It's ST, right? So there's like a lot of counting, and they're like very calculative in their head. Um, but you have it in a demon state. So I don't know how you would experience ST sleep when it's fourth. Like, is money something that you kind of just freely spend? Like, you don't, like, you're like, oh, it's not like a big deal, or is it something that you control on a demon, maybe on a demon swing?
Yeah, I'd say I don't control money. I just control my own habits, you could say.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could say I'm kind of like real stingy. Like when I want to splurge just like $5, something not even expensive, I have to like convince myself why. Like, oh, it's not that big a deal. So the way I see it is I don't have to control my money. I just control my actions. So if I spend little naturally, then I don't really have to look at the money. So like right now, I keep thinking I should check how much I have in the bank account, but I'm like, well, I'm not spending much, so I'm saving, so I don't have to really worry about it.
What is ST sleep? How would you define ST sleep? How do you experience that? Like, what are you processing inside?
Yeah, the way I see it is because I was looking into David Goggins. He has double masculine sleep too, and I kind of understood that in a way, but a different way because his is NF,
Yeah,
mine is ST.
right.
And what I noticed when I look back in memories, it just, I guess some anecdotes, is that whenever it's raining outside and like the weather is pretty bad, or like where basically I feel the desire or the compulsion, you can say, to just go exercise outside. Like sounds real, like I like pain, but I just feel drawn to that. And I guess something that I realized recently is a saying that really, I can't really explain it completely, but I think it's me coming to some sort of sleep understanding about, just how the world works. And it was when Dave was in the video, he said that life is suffering. He was talking about that Buddhist thing or whatever. And right after I heard that, like everything clicked into place, you can say. And the next line I thought is life. So life is suffering, suffering is meaning. And I don't really want to take too much of your time explaining, but basically everything that has value comes at a cost. So if you choose to go above and beyond what is the minimum, you could say, then your every action will have so much meaning that you'll naturally just, make the most of your life. And I'm not sure what that means because I think that David Goggins, since he's a decider and he avoids pain, him going into it is really alpha move. And me, if I'm more fear driven, you can say, then I view it as I'm using pain to deal with fear in some kind of way. That probably didn't make sense, but it's kind of like something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
I thought David Goggins is a jumper ESFP, so he would be an observer also. Were you thinking about someone else? Were you thinking about the guy who swears a lot, like the ESTJ
Right.
guy?
So what's David Goggins type? Can you remind me real quick?
He's double
Um,
feminine ESFP jumper. I think sleep last also.
so is he TESE or SET?
SETE. There's a
Oh,
guy, there's a TNE guy that swears a lot that David Shan likes to talk about. I forgot his name, but he's the ESTJ guy, and he's like the guy who's from the prison. Maybe you're like mixing them up, you know.
no, it was David Goggins. Maybe I got that mixed up. So I don't know. Maybe he is using his pain to go after his fear too. Man,
Yeah.
why did I keep thinking that?
Well, no, it's all good because I mean the stuff that you were describing is David Goggins' discovery of his NF last, right? Um, so what about you though? Because you have ST sleep. It's completely different. It has nothing to do with meaning. It's just like it's ST, right? There's it's like facts, So, but it's double masculine and it's facts like reporter like. So what like how are you doing reporter stuff inside you? In a double masculine state.
Okay. Maybe I'm trying to explain. Maybe it'd be better if I just talk about how I experienced it directly. So I
Yeah.
was doing this. I was doing this volunteer work where basically, um, what I find is that when I do manual labor, it's very repetitive. It's like very calming. So I would literally not take breaks, sleep last. But I found that that was the most relaxing time for me, even though I'm expending so much energy because it lets me go into that sleep mode. And I think of it sort of where I don't use feelings at all, just very mechanical and robot like.
Okay.
And that kind of, yeah, that's how I experience it.
Okay, I think that sounds more ST sleep. That's kind of interesting that go now you're doing manual labor and that's therapeutic for you because
Yeah.
it's mind numbing and you don't have to think. So that's interesting. Would you say that gives you kind of like a break from using your brain too much? From over indulging that NE, in the TI, when you're just like, you know, doing grunt
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I would say that. I notice that even like when I do exercise too, just as soon as I start, I go into a sort of a meditative state where I have to keep reminding myself to do sets and stuff, or even just walking. Just kind of like when you go in the car and you see things moving past, it gets you to that sleep zone. I think that, just physical movement in general helps me a lot.
Would you say that's because you are also kinesthetic?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, my favorite day, which actually was the last day before this COVID stuff happened, was when they finally gave me a sledgehammer. So I could just go to town on the like concrete walls and stuff. That was my favorite day.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So maybe your version of sleep is for masculine, feminine ENTPs. Because I can kind of relate to you in what you're saying because I'm also sleep last, but it's SF sleep. So for me, it's music that kind of puts me in that meditative state. But what you're describing kind of makes sense, except yours is like ST. So I'm confused about the ST part. But it makes sense if you're just like doing like grunt work, I guess, because like if it's SF, like I'm enjoying the music. For you, you're just like bashing something, like in a repetitive state. So it's not like, but where's the reporter stuff happening? Because like I interviewed an ENTP before, and what they told me was like, they like to plan what they're gonna do in that day, like step by step. Like I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. Like, do you ever do that? Like, do you think, okay, what am I gonna do today? This. Because it's SI, right? So it's like step by step.
Yeah, I guess me peacocking is I have a Google Calendar where I like supposedly I know what I'm doing every day,
Yeah.
but I a lot of times disrespect it. And the way that when I was in that construction thing, what I noticed is that during the lunch break, I'd be still in that sleep mode, and then I'd go help out in the kitchen, you could say. And what I noticed is that one time I didn't snap out of it, or I didn't transition out of that sleep mode, you can say. And like this lady asked me if like there was any leftovers, and I just said no. Like I was just being super monotone, but like just based off the reaction, me seeing like the NF play, you could say, is I realized that I probably came off like super pissed because I hadn't really snapped out of the like dope masculine sleep mode.
Also, sleep is correlated with setting boundaries with the tribe. Now, you have an interesting personality type because you are self above tribe, but then you are double activated on the FE, but then and you're also sleep loss. So it's like, yeah, you are, doing stuff for yourself most of the time, but at the same time, you also do a lot of things for the tribe, and then setting boundaries is something that you do last. So how does it work? Like, how does it work for you? Like, do you not set boundaries for the tribe, but then you're self above tribe, so it's kind of confusing,
Yeah, the way I see it is so I guess the way I would explain it is that I'm very aware of the vibe, you can say. I'm like I can always tell if I'm stepping on people's toes or not. But the majority of the time is that if I can get away with just doing it my way, I will. But generally, it's kind of weird because, yeah, just that question is making me think. I guess I could give another example. I find the best way to explain this is with
Sure.
examples, helps me process it. Is that when I was in that construction thing, I had kind of a reputation where I didn't talk much because I was like in that sleep mode, as I mentioned. But there was times in which people would ask me for small favors, and I find that kind of interesting because I thought I gave off the vibe of like people were kind of somewhat scared of me, not because I want to, but just because I mind my own business. But every time they'd ask me to do small favors, I do it, and I even go. I guess I would say that I help other people out, viewing it in a selfish way as I'm helping you because I want to be a better person myself.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, how do you experience extrovert feeling? Like, the way David Chan describes extrovert feeling is if the tribe is happy, then it works for them. So would you say that's something that you believe, that definition of it, or do you also do that in practice?
So how do I use FE sort of?
Yeah, like it's a definition. Does that sound correct to you? Like, do you try to make people like feel comfortable, make them feel happy? Because if they feel happy, things work for them. Well, like if you were dealing with someone with TE, they're not going to make small talk with you, right? They're just like get straight to work, because they figure, okay, if they get the things that needs to be done completed, then you can be happy. So it's like a reverse order, right? So how would you do things, or how would you experience using the FE with a tribe?
Yeah, I guess I do know it's important to make people feel happy. And I've kind of like realized recently that, information dominant side of me is that really doesn't matter how right you are about things. Like really what really matters at the end of the day is if how people feel. And that's something I really kind of neglected, you can say, but I kind of did on purpose. I'm just not to get too deep into it, or not to veer off completely. Well, basically, when I was 13, I decided to do online homeschooling. And I think that was me kind of disrespecting the SF, because I figured that if I stayed around like these kids, then I'm going to adopt these same values, which to me felt completely useless. So I'd rather just do online homeschooling and like learn things I want to learn, you can say. And up till now, I knew that I would pay the price for that, in which I would have to build my social skills up again, stuff like that. So yeah, as of recently, I'd say I'm still in that NT mode, and especially because this coronavirus pandemic is like even more of that. But I look forward to when this is all over to really start getting good at the SF, because I'm starting to value it more.
So that's the SF blast that you are referring to. So with the SF blast, do you like to tell people like what is cool and what they should value? you know?
Yeah, I guess example of that is whenever watching videos of people, or if they're giving some kind of public presentation, I always pay attention to their posture, you can say. And yeah, one time I had a friend who did a public presentation, and afterwards I told them that you were doing this, and that made you look nervous. So pay attention to that next time. And they didn't even notice, but I guess that's a way of doing the SF blast, right?
No, that's good. That's a good one, actually. That's a good explanation of it. I like that one. That's something that like an ISFJ would do, I guess. And yeah, I guess you have the same function stack at them, and that sounds about right. So it seems like you are quite balanced with the FE, even though you're not practicing it. I think once you get in the groove, it's pretty easy for you to get back in the swing of things, and not be like socially awkward. Like know what is socially
Yeah.
acceptable and what is cool and whatnot. Um, do you also follow the tribe values? Like, let's say your family, like, does your family have like a certain set of values that you adhere to? Would you say?
So like some kind of rituals, like festivities, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be religion, but it doesn't have to be. It could be,
Um,
it could be
or
racial.
just being, you could say. Yeah, in general, we don't really have a lot of FE values, you can say. Or maybe if I pay attention, I can notice it more. No, in general, I just really I stick to myself a lot. Like even though I'm living with other people, I really like stick to myself a lot. So I'm not really sure if I have much to say about it.
Okay, like, does your family have like a religion or whatever? And then, like, do you follow the religion, for example? Like, that would be a good example of like, FE, right?
Yeah, I follow the same religion as them. Um, yeah, just we're Jehovah Witnesses. But the way I see it is that since they raised me, they taught me a lot of things. But really, I kind of took it, or I accepted it, because I went through my own logic, seeing like why this makes sense. And I guess it was good that they kind of explained everything to me. Everything had a reason. So it's much easier for me to kind of respect that. And eventually I kind of made the reasons my own using other things too.
Got it. Um, so you're a double decider, so your TI is not going to be as pushy as someone that's like an INTP or ISTP, for example. But you still have that masculine TI. So when does that masculine TI come out when you're dealing with a tribe? If clearly they're saying something that's very illogical or illogically inconsistent, and then you're like alarm bells inside you is like ringing. Um, I know you have double activated FE, so you're probably gonna soften the blow when you're trying to correct someone. You're also info dominant too. That's why I want to bring this up. So having the most accurate information is gonna be very important to you. But how do you use your TI to someone? You know, like how do you use it? How would you use it?
Yeah. Um, Another personal experience. So why not? I
Yeah.
have a friend I was on the phone with where he was telling me this, what he wanted to do, this business idea. But really, you could say I was triggered because I was so like tempted to just tell him like how like incorrect it was, and not to be like rude or anything to him, but yeah, it's like if you ask me, it didn't seem like he put 2 seconds of extra thought into what he was doing.
Yeah.
But the way I figured is that, I was reading books and stuff, and I learned that really telling people the truth never works. But a way that does work is instead of just telling them what I think, which I really wanted to do, I figured it's better to just ask him questions and make him try to do, you could say, make his own TI and see that how what he was talking about really didn't make sense.
Gotcha. So you're leading him to the answer instead of like telling him the answer, which is more effective.
Yeah, to hold back because I really want to tell him just straight up just 10 different reasons why it didn't make sense. But I
Right.
figured that if it really is going to help him, then he has to come to the truth himself, you could say.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I can definitely see your double activated FE like constantly kicking in, regardless of your situation, which is a good thing. That's a good thing because then you soften the blow, right? Like you can still be effective, and but at the same time, like people don't get pissed at you, so it's like very double decider like. So you have SI last, and what kind of tidal waves have you experienced from having SI fourth? It is masculine, so you could see it. People tend to see their masculine functions, but even though you can see it, it doesn't mean you can control it. So what kind of tidal waves have you experienced with that SI last? Like lack of self control or lack of controlling things or lack of organization. Like what? And it's physical because it's S, right? So yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, the way I experienced it is actually with the first job I got, window cleaning. That seems pretty SI to me, just the same strokes. And I believe the boss I was teaching, he had SI savior somewhere. So he really just wanted me to do the same strokes. But me just wanting to like looking at videos, I figured it'd be so much better, more efficient if like you do like where it's a different technique where instead of just straight lines, you do one swipe the whole window. And yeah, the thing I believe he was like a FESI is that he really didn't tell me directly. And later I would find out that he was telling my coworkers not to correct me. And here I thought I was doing such a great job with like this thing, but it all turned out that I even would ask the boss directly, like, hey, am I doing a good job? Like, where I need to improve? And like, he really didn't want to tell me that because he's a kind of EJ, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found out that, yeah, I was actually really terrible at my job. And I guess that really pissed me off because I guess I'd say I lost a lot of respect for him because I really wanted to do my best. And here I thought I was, and it turned out I was just setting up a bunch of bad habits.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about the tidal wave part of that SI?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I totally forgot about that. So one day I thought I was doing so good, and I went to ask him if I could work more because I wanted to increase my hours. And then he told me that, yeah, I don't want you to work with me, or I don't want you to work more, which is weird. I thought he should have fired me. That's what made sense to me, anyways. But basically, he said that he doesn't want me to work more because I'm giving his company a bad name. But to me, it seemed contradictory because he was telling me I was a terrible employee. I was ruining his name, you can say, but he still kept me around. And after that, I really did take it seriously. And at the end, he said that I was a much better window cleaner because after he told me that, I realized that, yeah, I really have been messing up so far and didn't even realize it.
okay. Um, that seems like a double decider story, though. That doesn't sound like an SI. Doesn't sound like an SI story. It sounds that story was more like dealing with an EJ, and the EJ was giving you some problems because the EJ, instead of just giving you the truth. I mean, you can handle it no problem because you're double decider, right? Like for you, it's like okay,
Yeah.
feedback's not a big deal, right? But he didn't want to give it to you because he was an FE. So this sounds like a double decider story. You double decided because you can see his point of view, right? Like the fact that you were so clear at seeing his point of view. But I want to hear the SI. Like I want to hear like tidal waves. Like I'll give you an example. Okay, so maybe you have something to work with. We both have the same problem. We both have SI last. So one of my recurring problems, in my 20s and early 30s, thank God I got through this now, was I always go into debt because I don't control my finances, right? Like I'll pay off my debt, you know, and then go back into debt, then pay it off, and go back into debt, and it's like an endless loop. And really, what I needed to do was just control my finance, you know, spend less money and track my spending so I know where my money's going. You know, find the leaky bucket, you could say, the hole in the bucket. I mean, so where my money's going. But I didn't do that for the longest time. It's only then like last year I really started tracking like my spending to the penny, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I see like this big pie percentage. This is where my money's going. So I need to do less of that, or I need to make more money. So it's like, you know, so that was what like one of my big SI problems. So what kind of, I mean, and I had a positive tidal wave too, right? Because like when the pandemic happened, I actually paid off my debt and I had like a little bit of savings. So when the pandemic happened, I was out of job. I was okay, like I wasn't screwed, right? So that was like a positive tidal wave. While before it would have been really bad for me because, you know, because I wouldn't have controlled my money. So I was telling Dave this, and Dave's like, "Yeah, that is like a positive tidal wave. There you go. You did your SI, and look what happened. You reap the benefit." So what kind of SI tidal wave have you experienced in your life where you were not controlling like a physical thing? Like, you know, for me it's money, but what it could be different for you, right? It could be like are you not controlling your schedule, or are you, you know, are you always late at work? You know, what kind of tidal wave are you experiencing with the SI?
Yeah, I really thought a lot about that. I guess the reason why I was talking about that window cleaning story is kind of like me disrespecting the SF or the SI. I mean, and then I realized how bad I was actually at it or how bad I was at it unconsciously, you could say. And I thought about it a lot, but I think I'm really like the pit for me is like ahead for me because I never really been forced into a position where like my own problems came back to attack me. And I know it's like actually really bad because yeah, when it does come, it's gonna hurt a lot. So yeah, I'd say that so far I haven't had any really strong SI tidal waves. Not that I can think of, nothing that really like caused me a lot of, you know, monetary pain or emotional pain, nothing like that. So yeah, really, I don't really have any good examples, but I know I am aware that eventually it's gonna hit me somehow. So I'm looking out for that.
Okay, let me rephrase this question then. What kind of things problem do you encounter on a day-to-day basis? And I'll give you some examples so you have something to work with. For example, for me, one of the things that really pisses me off is when I'm driving and I put the groceries in the back of the car and I hit the brakes, all the groceries would like spill all over the floor in the back seat. And I'm like, oh, you know, screw this, you know, I'm so pissed, right? So, you know, and I always stub my toe on like, you know, places because I'm not sensory aware. Like I just, like yesterday I stubbed my toe and I have this huge like, you know, my toe is pretty much my pinky toe is pretty much like, you know, swollen now. So what kind of
Okay.
like SI stuff are like? Do you stumble into things all the time, bump into things all the time, or you know, what kind of SI issues are you having, or things problem? What kind of things problem?
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was trying to look at real extreme examples, but I guess just look kind of smaller.
Sure.
Yeah, I just have a really hard time following schedule. Not when it came to work, I was on time. But when it comes to me putting physical control on myself, you could say with schedules, it's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's like there'll be weeks where I wanted to do something, but I just keep looking back and realize how much I haven't really been doing.
Do you have any
Yes.
example?
Yeah, example. Yeah, I was about sorry about that. So example I could give is yeah, I bought weights to do exercise during this pandemic. And yeah, I'll do it from time to time. I will get into it for a little bit, like really strongly. But most of the time I pretty much just lack the self-discipline to do things I know are good for me. But you know, I just keep forgetting about it. Even though they're right there, I can see it, but I still don't exercise as much as I would like to. Or I guess one that I've really been struggling with is having an alarm. I want to wake up earlier, but I find a struggle that if I don't really have anything clear to do, then I just sleep in more. And every day I feel like I wasted the morning, but I just keep repeating the same problems over and over.
Okay, yeah, there you go. You got it. Yeah, there you go. I do that too, so I completely get that.
Yeah.
Um, so you have trouble sticking to a routine, pretty much, like
Yeah.
a regular wake up routine, a regular fitness routine, and because of that, you know, you don't reap any of the benefits that you would otherwise get had you stuck to the routine. You know, if you were to work out, you would get fitter, obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
What about audio? You're also audio. So how do you experience being auditory? Like, are you good at learning through sound? Like, do you like to listen to audiobooks, for example, or how do you like? Do you have a good ear for music? Like, how do you experience your auditory side?
Yeah, I guess something I heard from when you did other interviews is I listen to YouTube videos on a much faster speed,
Okay.
but nothing compared to my brother. Like he's crazy. But for me, I listen to videos at minimum at 2 times speed, and I can even go up to 3 times speed. And after that, I have to have that volume very high and I have to really concentrate. So I find that, yeah, I like listening to music, but the way I experience it through my consume at least is I look through videos at very high speeds.
Gotcha. You're just absorbing as much as you can.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the sayings that Benjamin had before is that you don't really consume anything unless you organize it. So do you organize anything that you consume? Like, do you put it in like a Word document and then put it in like a step-by-step format? Because SI is all about step-by-step, right? So when you gather all this like anti-concept, do you funnel it down to like a practical step-by-step? Like step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this. You know.
Um, yeah. I guess a way you could explain that too is recently I've been working on a personal project where I put all the concepts you could say I've been learning through all the psychology I learned into a sort of a framework, you can say. It's a picture I have that I can look at. And it's really hard to explain because this is kind of somewhat interesting because just going on a tangent here, I was I was seeing these concepts, but I wanted to organize it. So I made this sort of system. But the interesting thing is that my unconscious, you could say, was giving me all the puzzle pieces, but only like much later am I trying to understand how does this make sense. So it's kind of vaguely answers your question, but basically for the general concepts, you could say the feminine any concepts, I've been trying to track that with this personal project I've been making.
How do you experience that "don't control me, bro" syndrome? Like the EP "don't control me." Like, how do you experience that?
Yeah, like I'll gladly yeah, just do chores around my house. That's a simple example. Like when I'm listening to videos, I'll just clean. I find that when I'm moving and like consuming stuff at the same time, it's pretty meditative too. But basically, if my parents tell me that this is the schedule for the weekly chores, you have to do it, I feel like I really don't want to. So I gladly spend like 3 hours or more just doing house chores and stuff while listening to other things. But as soon as they tell me you have to follow this routine, you have to do this, I feel like it's a obligation, and then I really don't want to do it.
If your parents gave you a list of chores, but they told you, okay, it's up to you when you want to do it. You just have to get it done, but it's up to you. You have to finish within the 7 days, though. Is that like less annoying to you? Like that's kind of like, okay, yeah, no, that's better. How would you react to that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was doing already. Basically, when I was just cleaning, I just do whatever was needed. But then they wanted, or they want me to do this specific schedule because to me, I like washing dishes. Just stuff where you stay in place a long time, so you could just really focus. But then they want me to do other things, and I would say like, well, I already did all this other stuff. Get someone else to do it because they haven't been helping out as much as me. But I guess that's where it comes into, yeah, like where they want me to do specific things, but I'm just trying to keep rebelling. And even though I'm being helpful, I'm not being helpful the way they want it to be.
I see. So you don't mind helping as long as it's on your terms and your schedule.
Yeah, if I have a choice, then if I feel like I have control more like it, then yeah, it's no problem.
Got it. Have you had a controlling swing before where you try to control other people because of like a big tidal wave? They said that EPs
Um,
controlling of all types, right? When you go that demon swing. So when have you been really controlling?
Controlling to other people.
Yeah.
I bet you could ask my family. They have plenty of examples. Yeah, I'm trying to think of one like too physical as like controlling other people.
Well, your controlling will be SF. So when have you been controlling when it comes to other people's demeanor, or behavior?
Yeah, I think a factor that goes into this too is I've feminine FE.
Yeah.
And I guess when I talk to my friends before, like that example I gave where they gave a public presentation, or another friend too, I kind of told them that, hey, your posture is actually really important. So you just should do this, just keep good posture. And I give them some reasons too. But what I find is that unless you could say, care about them in a way, like if they're my friends or family, or even then, I'm very hesitant in trying to control people. I just figure it's much better to let them figure out themselves.
Gotcha. So you're mostly guiding people as opposed to telling people what to do because it's feminine, right? It's not masculine, so it's not it's not
Yeah.
influencing anything. All right. All right, Ezekiel. I have two last questions for you, and we'll wrap up the interview. The first one is, what advice can you give to other ENTPs on how to work on that SI last? Like what have you figured out for yourself that has worked to, reduce the damage done by not using SI? Like when are you succeeding with the SI? Basically.
Yeah. Just basically the way I see it is that SI is kind of the worst and the best demon to have because you can literally work at that almost all the time every day. So it's a really easy demon to see, to work on. It's
Yeah.
pretty obvious. An analogy I gave myself is that if you have like your brain, it's like any concepts, whatever. Like I thought of it as like a thundercloud, all the charged particles. But until you get the lightning rod, like some form of SI,
Yeah.
then really all that potential is pretty much useless unless you direct it somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely, lead intuitive because you
Yeah.
analogies nonstop. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. But yeah, I think you are spot on though. Like SI is one of the easiest you know, functions to understand how it works. So even though it's your last, it's like, okay, no, you know what? It's pretty straightforward how to use this. So it's not like, a magic trick. It's kind of like with SE also. I think SE is pretty easy also. So I think S in general is easy to understand. I think people with like who are sensors and have N as a demon, I think that's gonna be harder to figure out because like, I think we're kind of lucky that we have N first because then the abstract stuff it comes easy. But then if you don't believe in the abstract stuff and you're looking at things from a sensory perspective, and someone now forces you to use the intuition, you're kind of like screwed, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's much more obvious overall.
Now, do you have any do you have any questions for me or final message to everyone before we wrap up this interview?
Just a question for you, real quick. Something I've been thinking about. You may have answered this before.
Sure.
So if you don't have the internal monologue and you don't have visuals, is how do you what goes on in your head? So like for me, I have a monologue where I literally hear voice or like some internal monologue all the time, but I don't see images. But if you don't have images or monologue, how do you like see things in general?
Well, I have monologue, so I don't know. I don't know what the.
Oh,
I
so
don't.
you have masculinity?
No, I have. What do you mean masculinity?
Yeah, I was watching a video from David Shan, and they said that a pattern seems to show up is that people who have an inner monologue have masculine T somewhere, if it's TI or TE, either one.
I have feminine TE, but I'm play first, so there's always monologue happening in my head.
Oh.
So it could be the play, that's causing the monologue. But no, dude, I have monologue in my head all day long. It's annoying, but yeah, I don't see visuals though. The visual thing doesn't, I'm not a feminine, masculine, or double feminine, so I don't see pictures. But yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's probably my bad then.
yeah. All right, Ezekiel, thanks again for doing this interview and for coming out. And yeah, take care, man.
Yeah, you too. It was great talking to you.
All right,
Okay,
peace
see
out,
you
dude.
guys. Bye.